Hello and welcome to Into Your Life podcast. I'm Lenka and I'm joined here by my wonderful co-host Natalie.
Hi, we invite you to join our weekly conversations about finding more life in one's life.
Well, what does it actually mean?
We have discussions with guests about ways to live happier, healthier, and more fulfilling lives, both personally and professionally.
That sounds great. Let's go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Into Your Life podcast. Today we have a very interesting guest and I can't wait to introduce you to them. It's Liora Elias, who is the Enneagram Doctor. And to be honest, I'm coming to this conversation as a blank sheet of paper, kind of excited to learn and understand a bit more about this magic that is Enneagrams, which honestly I know very little about. So I will not do much of a rambling introduction because I think that the best person to introduce us to today's topic and the magic and the science and everything that goes into it is Liora themselves. So hi there. Tell us a bit more
Hi.
about who you are, what you do, why you're here.
Yeah, so my name's Liora Elias, and I go by the Enneagram Doctor. And I am an certified Enneagram coach. I'm also a college professor at my local university. I'm located in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I work with individuals and also therapists, primarily from the LGBTQ population, teaching them on an individual level how to use the Enneagram system as a personal development tool. And with therapists, I'm teaching therapists how to use the same tool in their therapy practice.
I would love for you if you could explain a little bit more what is the Enneagram system? Where does it start? What magic science art it uses? And we can then look more specifically in some of the applications, be it in personal development, be it in therapy, be it in professional sphere.
Yeah, so happy to. So the Enneagram has a really interesting lineage. It was a discovery, like an archaeological discovery, and it had been discovered all over the place, like all over the world. And some people started to get curious, and it has like origin story that is a little vague. Like we don't really totally know like where'd it come from. But we do know we found the symbol, and we do know we got curious. Humans got curious and started to like look into, because the symbol is breaks up a circle into 9 points. And so at some point, a Chilean psychotherapist started to hypothesize that those 9 points had meaning for the ways we see the world, and started to research that and found it to be the case that we as humans can, in our core way of seeing the world, we can be divided up into 9 particular viewpoints. And so in the Enneagram is revealed to us how we view things, what motivates us, why we do what we do. It accounts for a lot of human behavior, and it's one of the only tools that gets underneath, like it's interested in our habits and it's interested in our behavior, but it's more interested in getting to the root of why we're on these habit paths and why we do what we do, why we react the way we react, why our subconscious hides things from us, and so much is revealed. And a lot of what gets revealed with doing Enneagram work is what our subconscious mind has protected us from for good reason, but is likely no longer super useful anymore.
It's so interesting because there's always so many different personality tests and models, and some of them are going very much in the behavior, some of them are going very much in the personality and attitudes, and some of them, there's so many different scales, how they look at, classifying or labeling people. And I find always personality tests interesting with they can really empower you with better understanding and some tools. And it can very much become just a tool for excuses of like, well, this type of person, XY, and that's why this is challenging for me and this doesn't work for me, anything. So how do you then work with clients and really using this tool to help them achieve goals? I know that you help people through coaching and other methods. So how do you use this tool to allow people to really leverage the benefit and value and magic of this tool and help them avoid potentially some of the challenges of this having this label and almost hiding behind the label?
Yeah. Well, luckily for me, so far, all the people I've worked with, I've been interested and willing to take the tool and use it in a really comprehensive way. So what can happen, like you said, when people are introduced, they kind of find themselves in the system and then like, oh, I'm like this is telling me I do it this way, and then just stay there, and that can totally happen. But I do find that people who are willing to invest financially their time and energy into Enneagram work, those aren't the people that are going to just stop at the superficial level. And so what I do with clients is usually, depending on their level of awareness and engagement prior with the Enneagram, if they're very beginners, we'll start at the beginning and work on, okay, so let's find you where you are situated in this Enneagram map. So I have what's called a typing session that's specially dedicated to pointed questions to discover which worldview is most right, which is the one that is forming the way this person walks in the world. And then from there, we develop curated tools, inner work, ways in which to do inner work to undo some of the programming that's been part of our just our brains, like how our brains operate. So for example, I had one client who, and a lot of Enneagram work can be done like with stuck points. So when a person comes and, for example, I had a client who had a block to do some writing and had a giant need to get this writing done for like it was for a divorce. So it needed to happen and it was on a timeline, and this client was dreading it and putting it off and putting it off, and we had a session and she spoke to what was the holdup for her to get this thing done and why it was causing so much suffering. And with just knowing how she sees the world and how her type structure talks to her about, like, well, her type structure tends to think, and she lives in the 4 space of the Enneagram, so they're divided into 9. And in the 4 space, this particular person had imagined that she can be productive from from the time she gets up in the morning till the time that she goes to bed, and gets hard on herself in those late evening hours when clearly no work can be done. But she imagines that she's like, because there's this big need to get this thing done, she starts to get hard on herself and gives herself a hard time, like, I'm not good enough, I'm not, and comparing herself to other people, like anyone else would get this done, anybody else could write this divorce opus. But it all she needed to hear was, like, one, it is okay to rest, like, and not only okay but necessary. So let's find a way for you to get this done in a way that uses your time and energy more precisely and cleanly. And then I gave her even that night, because she was saying on that coaching night, well, I'm just gonna get off this call and spend the rest of this night grinding this thing out, when clearly she had there was no energy for that. So I told her to just give herself 1 hour, the permission to work for 1 hour, and to close it down after that hour. And from there, she just got on a roll. It was like all she needed to hear was to set some parameters around it, and it got written that night.
It's amazing how this little permission that we sometimes need from someone else can really transform, how we see ourselves and how we approach others, working with others, but mostly just ourselves. I think there's definitely the dynamic of understanding, our motivations and behaviors and understanding others better. But for me, it's the inner journey, and also often this permission, this awareness that comes to working with someone like yourself, and being a coach, and always quite a magic of coaching that comes in. And really, it can be, as you said, on any kind of a scale. It can help, and be it in relationships. And I, you work with some amazing clients in terms of on their relationship journey, and even some, pretty famous people from reality TV, and kind of really cool stories to the people in their workplace, and understanding teams and understanding people who are employed or self-employed, or then obviously working specifically with therapists. So I can kind of, obviously we all can almost imagine how the individual work with relationships or work could look. But I'm intrigued to learn a little bit more about then how you can support other health and well-being professionals, such as therapists, with this power of, the knowledge of Enneagrams and the Enneagram system. They'll really then go even deeper with their clients, because obviously therapy is a system on its own with its own tools and modalities. And this is an interesting addition to the toolbox, I can imagine.
Yeah. So with therapists, I've had therapists say that after they've been introduced to the Enneagram, they don't even know how they used to practice therapy prior, because it is such a precise tool, and it gives such clear guidance for how to work with people. And so the work I do with therapists is, I usually work with therapists who are at a beginner level with the Enneagram. So they know of it, they know that it's a cool thing, but they don't really know what to do with it or how to work with it. So I do that in a workshop, and I teach it's a 3-part workshop. So the first part is, what is this thing? The second part is, let's find you therapist on this Enneagram map, because the tool isn't useful to share unless you find yourself there. And then the third part is, every single type has like one message that they really need to hear. And so teaching the therapist, once you have a sense of, and give them some guidance about how to help their clients explore their own type, find themselves in their type, or give them some resources to get typed. And then there's just one single message most people, like, ones need to hear that they're good and good enough and perfect just as they are. And twos need to hear that they're loved and cared for and wanted, right? And so when a therapist knows that, those are two different messages, and they're along the same lines, but when you precisely need to hear that, the therapist can provide that in a myriad of different ways, and it doesn't have to be explicitly those words. But when the therapist knows, like, oh, you person are like programmed, and you're doing everything that you're doing because you want to feel loved, that gives a therapist a really good entry into how to get their client a little bit of traction in feeling more whole
I am finding this really fascinating. I've never heard of Enneagrams or any of this, and I'm finding it really interesting and starting to get some sort of a picture. But one thing, for myself, but also for our audience who are most probably like me, not heard of this, can you share a little bit what's been your journey in getting you doing or sharing or teaching this process, and how did you come across it, and what sort of, I don't know, kicked you up the butt or pushed you into becoming a teacher of this and coaching people and helping them, because it's not something that, as I've said, I've heard of before, and I don't think it's something that is hugely common, or I've just been living under a rock for the last few years. So can you just share a little bit about your background and what's got you to where you are today?
I teach full-time as a university professor, and along the way somewhere, I had a meeting with a faculty in my department that kind of pressed me to consider what is my future in academia. And in that moment, I sort of felt like I was at a little bit of a crossroads in the sense of considering how else might I spend my professional time and energy. And so I came across the Enneagram, but with a friend introduced me, and it was in about 2020. And I took a lot of time personally to dig into it, which happens to be pretty typical of my like personality structure. We like to dig in deep to new ideas and things that we find interesting and fascinating. So I went on a personal self-discovery process. And so fast forward to this conversation, and I just got this sense that Enneagram was going to be meaningful for me professionally. And so I started to consider what that might look like. And I kind of just got involved with different people who are doing work in the Enneagram communities. And there, it's like amazing because the Enneagram has an international presence, and it lives in conferences and in academics and in workforce life and in HR. Like people take these ready tests for HR screenings, and um so there is a mainstream aspect to it, but it also is like I come across people all the time who say, "Oh, I've heard that, but I don't really know what it is." And my one of my missions actually is to bring this particular tool to the LGBTQ IA plus population, particularly because um so many of us don't really know that it's available, that it's out there, that there's this resource for doing some really powerful work that we as a community don't even know exists.
So you say that you're a professor. What do you teach at your university?
So in the university setting, I teach public speaking classes. And I also teach in the media studies area. So I teach like a reality television course, which is how I got linked up with this reality television star who I worked with and did a typing session with um, as part of a collaboration.
So so understanding the Enneagram and working with that, you can bring that then into your professorship, is that the right word? Into your teachings at the university. I think I'll go down that way. But are you
Well,
also looking to do it outside of the university as well?
yeah, so I don't particularly do Enneagram work with my university students. We're doing the more traditional content from the syllabus off of off of the standard what happens in a public speaking class and standard what happens in a reality television class. But so the Enneagram work that I do is more on a consulting basis, and I try to keep those worlds a little bit separate.
So it'd be a nice challenge to bring this shake up the university classes.
I know. Well, I get so curious about my students, and some of them I'm like, oh, wow, you sound a lot like a whatever. But I try not to go there too much. It's not best practice to go around putting Enneagram types on all the people in the world.
So you obviously, as you've mentioned, you said that you keep them separate. You've got your university, you've got your classes that you teach, and then you are starting to bring in the Enneagram being as a consultant and wanting to focus very much on the LGBTQ communities to help. I gather is you wanting to help people to live the best life that they can live and find a way that they can fit into the world. Is that right?
Exactly. Like, for example, I had this one client who we recently wrapped up our sessions, but during that process, I discovered during the process of working with them how deeply they struggle with anxiety. And that to a certain extent, all the things that they've done have been sort of putting band-aids on the experience that they have, sometimes in a debilitating way, around their experience of anxiety. And so me and them did some sessions, a handful of sessions to really get under and look at what is going on. And it turns out that for whatever reason, this person like had a lot of resistance before talking to me to doing some of the really basic things we need to do for our bodies to just regulate, like do some deep breathing and calming the body. And so like breath and meditation, for whatever reason, for this person, were trigger words. Like, I'm not going to do that. Like that, don't tell me what to do. But it softened when they worked with me, and I gave them this really easy, it's called box breathing. It's a 4-4-4-4, and they practice it 5 minutes a day. And afterwards, I mean, they still have a lot of ways to go with really like getting under what that experience is, but it starts with the body. It starts with our nervous system. And so talking to someone that a person can trust and who has done that for themselves, like calmed the system to be so that anxiety, like for me, I have, and in my type structure, anxiety is it's a real devil. And I've done a lot of that work for myself in terms of, meditating and the somatic work to make myself a calm person. And so that's what it is with coaching. We can take our clients as far as we've gone ourselves. And so with this example, because I've done some of that and I can speak as a authority, both from experience and from this, as a certified Enneagram coach, they listen to me. And so it's going to make a big difference in how they walk in the world when they can breathe, like just really take a breath.
So what would be your sort of top tips, or what would be like signs that somebody would need this help? So some of our audience might be thinking, okay, this sounds interesting, but I don't need that. Or maybe, is this something that I need? Is this something that I need to look down and look into it further? So what would be some of the signs that can help our audience to know this is something I really need, or maybe this is not quite on my path, but hang on, I have a friend who might find this useful. So what would be some signs that they can look out for?
Yeah, so Enneagram work can be really helpful for really any person. But if you're a person who is struggling with like any major chronic issues or traumas, then therapy is going to be the right place to do some of this work. But if you're a person who's done that and like sifted through those traumas and gotten some healing and is in a more forward thinking place, that's what Enneagram is there for. So Enneagram takes us from here to there. It doesn't look back all that much aside from the core wounding, which speaks to why we've developed some of the ways in which we talk to ourselves the way we do. But any person with curiosity and openness and has relative stability in their life can benefit hugely from accessing this tool and finding where they are, where they land in the Enneagram map.
I'm thinking about kind of the other potential modalities and things that you might be able to also add into the mix. You kind of already brought in the breath work, which I think is wonderful to really, we can be so much in our heads and we often just need to settle in our bodies as well and really be grounded and just, there are so many different wonderful ways of using our breath and everything. Especially since, this work that you do often involves emotions and involves going deeper into our emotions, understanding our emotions and expressing our emotions. Are there any other kind of tools or modalities or things that you would be then, bringing into your work with clients to teach them, to show them, for people to then understand that it's not, again, just this personality test, you get a score, you get this label, but then when they work with someone like yourself, that then will also be empowered with a variety of tools to really allow them. And I think understanding and working with our emotions, accepting them, not being afraid of them, knowing how to share them, I think it's a very important part of the work that you're doing, specifically in your area, but around the world with anyone else as well.
Yeah, so there are a lot of different researchers and practitioners of the Enneagram who take this tool in many, many, many different directions. Right now, the ways that I do this work typically has to do with the self-discovery process and working with beginners to find themselves in that map. But I do have a particular interest also in looking at sexuality and sexuality, not just in terms of how one identifies or experiences attraction, but like the ways in which our type structure plays a role in our sex lives. And it's actually unbelievably fascinating when you study human behavior in groups and you talk to people who are all the same type and they speak about some of the common hiccups in their relationships around sex. I mean, this stuff has been researched in such a deep way that the insights and gleanings you can get from knowing, oh, well, my type believes that if it doesn't look exactly this way in the bedroom, that it's wrong. And if if that gets revealed to a person, that can change their whole relational experience.
You're touching on an interesting, at least in my mind, it connected an interesting dynamic, kind of a worldly discussion, I would say, the balance between nature and nurture to, understand how much of this is something that we were born with, that we kind of been given through our genes and potentially then having some predispositions through epigenetics, and how much of it is just our society, it's our upbringing, it's what happened to us, the little traumas, the big traumas, the education, the political systems, the surroundings that were around us. And I find it fascinating to often consider whether this type is it just me, or is it then all these layers, and how can I work with it? To what extent can I, are we flexible, and can we work and improve? And I love that, we can use this work to figure out who we are better, understand who we are better, and then achieve our goals or overcome our obstacles as well. I don't know if I have a question in there, actually.
Yeah, I mean, the Enneagram,
idea.
yeah, exactly. I mean, you're getting to the heart of it, because the heart of the Enneagram work is about self-compassion. And self-compassion grows from learning, one, I'm not alone. Like, I'm not alone. I struggle in similar ways to all these other people struggle. And it looks a lot like this, and it might have a different flavor for me, but in the underneath it, it's a lot the same. And two, that it turns out that when we have compassion for ourselves, when we can see ourselves as whole, human, fallible beings who are doing our best, we can give that away. And when we don't have that for ourselves, what we're giving away is we're kind of hard on our people. We're hard on our close people, because we're hard on ourselves, and that gets transferred. So when we do get all of that on board for ourselves, we are much more wonderful, gentle, kind beings to be in relationship with.
And it's in relationship with ourselves, as well as with relationship with others, and be it romantic relationship, be it family relationships, be it work relationships, or the relationship with the world as it is as well. And that's where I find, us doing this podcast and us meeting wonderful people like yourself and being able to share with people such an interesting and insightful and really privileged place to be, that we can allow people to figure out what is the relation that they want to work on. Is it a relation to self? Is it a relation to others? On what level it is that they do want to work on. So if we have any people listening or viewing this and they're thinking, okay, that sounds like something I would like to know more about, where would people start? Do they go on Google and search for Enneagram test and take an online test and get some results and read through it and be like, that's it? Do they book with you or someone like you and go through coaching, even if they don't necessarily have this big problem or obstacle? Or if they do have a big problem obstacle, do they ideally work with you, or can they do it themselves? Could you just guide people a little bit in how do you then dip your toes in if you're just curious, or what do you do if you really feel like I need serious help?
Yeah. Well, for just for curiosity's sake, exploring, so there's a lot of open access information in the internet about what the Enneagram is and how it looks. And just taking a look at that, some of those descriptions can be a starting place. I would definitely recommend testing. Can be useful, but it also can send people off in confusion. So getting a guide to help you analyze your test is I highly, highly, highly recommend it. Leaving it at I take a test and now I am this is usually going to set you in a direction for confusion, because the tests have not, I mean, some of them are more accurate than others, but most of them will not, they're not giving you, because they don't know you, and you are a complex human being. So tests are like a starting point. And usually I use them with my clients to get us a little traction on narrowing down where you are on this map. But then we do more in-depth work. So I highly recommend getting a guide like myself or another expert in Enneagram to do this work. It is a investment. It's a financial investment and a time investment, and it is so very worthwhile.
I'm definitely gonna be, Googling and looking further into this, because one of the things that Lenka and I very much do with this podcast is we don't have specific questions and we don't research beforehand, so that we come to it, as Lenka said in the beginning, as an open sheet, a blank sheet, to really start to learn about what it is that our guests are sharing with us. And this has been a real learning thing for me, because I've never even heard of it before, and I'm now very much intrigued, because I like to learn new things, and of course I'm going to be off on the Googling and checking it out and having a look and looking at diagrams. But before I go off on a dive down into the rabbit hole of Enneagrams, is we always ask our guests to share either top tips or a gold nugget, or if they have something that we've not asked them and they're like, I need to share this information, this is very important, now's the space, now's the time, that either for if you've got something that we've not asked and you would like to share, or a tip to help people to move forward, to just a top tip that you generally share with your clients, or even a gold nugget. And my mind's just totally gone off somewhere. So this is that space to just have that gold nugget of what you have to share.
Yeah, so along those lines, I would definitely say, and since you're planning to do a little casual exploring too, this is good advice for you, which is some people, when they find themselves in the Enneagram map, there's a variety of different experiences that people have. Some people read the description of a type and feel a wave of shame come over them because they've been doing things, they see that they've been doing things unconsciously for a long time that has been getting in their way. And it becomes really clear when it's all written out very straightforwardly. Some people like myself, and this is also based kind of like can speak to my own type, which is when I saw mine, I was like, oh, thank you so much for telling me that I do all of that. I want to know that. And I don't know how I was going to learn all of that, especially in such a concise download. So thank you. But just keep in mind that the experience can be really varied, and to take as much effort not to turn away just because you don't like what you see. Because that is a common thing to sort of push it away and say, oh, you're telling me something about me. I don't want to hear that. Ouch. And then close it down.
Yeah, the shadow self has a lot to answer for, and it's learning about ourselves, because there's always the light and the dark, the positive, the negative. Everything has two sides, including us. So thank you for sharing that. That is good advice. As like you said, for somebody like me who's probably now going to go off and do a bit of research and look into it, it is always interesting to see something that maybe makes us feel a little bit uncomfortable, but I take that as a good thing and as a challenge to myself. But I appreciate not everybody does. So thank you for sharing that tip. That's a useful tip. Now, if our listeners are thinking, okay, I've done the research, I've gone in, I've checked it out, this is something I want to look in further, how can they reach you? How can they reach out to you to have a conversation with you, or to get your help, or whatever it is that they need?
Yeah, so I'm reachable via my website, which is www.theenneagramdoctor.com. Also, my email is leora@theenneagramdoctor.com, and I can be reached there. I do have a presence in both in LinkedIn and Instagram, also as the Enneagram Doctor. So happy to be found there and followed there. So yeah, those are the ways that I can be reached.
And very simple, very short and simple, and it's always handy, especially on a branding point, which Lenka will agree, all the same. So so yeah, that sounds really great. And I just really want to say thank you for sharing your time with us. I think there's quite a time difference between us. So thank you so much. And for our listeners, has this got you thinking? Has this triggered an idea or thought in your head and you thinking, oh my word, I need to find out more about myself? Or are you thinking, hell no, I'm off. This is not something I want to do. But just think about those friends that you have. Is this something that that would help them? So share this episode with them. Or do you have any questions or topics that you would like us to find out more about, that you would like us to look into and see if we can find a guest? Or do you know somebody who would like to be a guest on here, who has an interesting topic that either myself or Lenka has not heard of before? We're always looking for new topics and guests. So please do reach out and share with us. And share with us your thoughts on what you think about Enneagrams. Is this something that's intriguing you, or maybe not so much? And thank you so much for being our guest, for coming and, as I said, sharing with us this information. Has been really interesting. It's not something that I've known about, and it has intrigued me. And I always love it when something intrigues me. I think we can always learn more about things. It doesn't mean that we've got to become experts in them, but I always think it's great to just learn about what other people are doing, what is available, what's out there. So thank you for giving me a teaching day. Every day is a teaching day, isn't it? So thank you for that. And we just want to say that it's been wonderful having you here with us, and we look forward to seeing you on your journey and how you are moving forward with this.
My pleasure. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Thank you so much.
And until next time, bye.
If you enjoyed listening to our conversation, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and don't forget to subscribe. We would love it if you could give us a 5-star rating and write a short review.